Accidental contact. The iridescent corridors of Nexus Station hummed with the constant bustle of intergalactic commerce and diplomacy. Ambassador Jason Chen, Earth's newest representative to the Galactic Confederation, navigated the crowded walkways with practiced ease. His dark eyes, sharp with intelligence, scanned the throngs of diverse alien species as he made his way to yet another meeting. After 6 months on the station, Jason had grown accustomed to the kaleidoscope of alien life forms. The initial wonder had faded, replaced by a seasoned diplomat's cool professionalism. Today's agenda: negotiate trade agreements with the Zaraxian delegation, a notoriously prickly species known for their complex social hierarchies and even more complex legal system. As he rounded a corner, a flash of brilliant azure caught his eye. A group of tall, willowy figures glided through the crowd, their movements fluid and graceful. Jason recognized them instantly as Etherians, one of the oldest and most mysterious species in the Confederation. Their crystalline skin refracted the station's light, creating a dazzling aurora effect that never failed to captivate onlookers. At the center of the group was a figure that stood out even among her striking kin. Her form was more delicate, her azure skin deeper and richer in hue. An intricate lattice of silvery markings adorned her face and arms, pulsing gently with an inner light. Jason found himself staring, transfixed by her otherworldly beauty. It was then that disaster struck. A young Terran child, no more than 5 years old, broke free from his mother's grasp and darted into the Etherian procession. The aliens recoiled, their normally serene faces twisting in shock and disgust. Without thinking, Jason lunged forward, scooping up the child mere inches from colliding with the central Etherian figure. Time seemed to slow as Jason's momentum carried him forward. He felt the brush of something cool and electric against his skin, saw a pair of luminous silver eyes widen in surprise. Then, chaos erupted. Alarms blared throughout the station. The Etherian guards materialized seemingly out of thin air, their crystalline weapons trained on Jason. The diplomat froze, still clutching the now wailing child, as the implications of what had just happened crashed over him like a tidal wave. He had touched an Etherian. Worse, he had touched what he now realized must be Etherian royalty. "Stand down." A melodious voice cut through the cacophony. The azure Etherian stepped forward, her silver eyes locked on Jason. This was unexpected. Jason's diplomatic training kicked in, overriding his panic. He gently set the child down, who immediately scampered back to his horrified mother. Then he straightened and met the Etherian's gaze. "Your Highness," he said, hoping he had guessed her status correctly. "I offer my deepest apologies for this transgression. I acted without thinking, seeking only to prevent harm." The Etherian tilted her head, studying Jason with an unreadable expression. "Harm," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "An interesting concept, Ambassador Chen. But intentions matter little in the face of actions." Jason's heart sank. How did she know his name? The implications were terrifying. "I understand, Your Highness. I am prepared to face whatever consequences my actions have incurred." A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the Etherian's silver eyes. "Are you? I wonder." She turned to her guards, speaking in a lilting language that Jason's universal translator couldn't decipher. After a moment, she faced him again. "You will accompany us to Ethoria," she declared. "There, the full weight of your accident will be determined." Jason's mind reeled. Ethoria. The Etherian homeworld was legendary, a place no human had ever set foot. The diplomatic implications alone were staggering. But before he could formulate a response, a sharp pain lanced through his skull. He stumbled, vision blurring. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the Etherian princess reaching out, her silvery fingertips almost, but not quite, touching his forehead. Jason awoke to the gentle hum of an unfamiliar engine. His eyes fluttered open, taking in surroundings that were decidedly not the utilitarian quarters he'd grown accustomed to on Nexus Station. The room, if it could be called that, seemed to be composed entirely of living crystal. Walls pulsed with soft, bioluminescent light, and what appeared to be furniture grew seamlessly from the floor. He sat up, head spinning, and nearly jumped out of his skin when a voice spoke from the corner of the room. "You're awake. Good." The Etherian princess stood there, her azure form seeming to shimmer in and out of focus. Jason blinked, unsure if it was an effect of whatever had knocked him unconscious, or simply another aspect of Etherian physiology he'd never encountered before. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "What happened?" "You are aboard the Celestial Tier, my personal vessel," she replied. "We are en route to Ethoria." As for what happened, she paused, those mesmerizing silver eyes studying him intently. "That is a rather complex question, Ambassador Chen." Jason struggled to his feet, fighting down a wave of vertigo. "I don't understand. Why am I here? Why didn't you just turn me over to Confederation authorities?" The princess's expression shifted, a ripple of something like curiosity passing across her crystalline features. "Because, Ambassador, what transpired between us goes far beyond the jurisdiction of your Confederation. You touched me. Do you have any idea what that means?" "I know," Jason admitted, a cold knot of fear forming in his gut. In human culture, accidental contact isn't usually, well, it's not ideal in a diplomatic setting, but it's hardly a crime. A sound like tinkling crystal filled the air, Etherian laughter. Jason realized with a start. "Oh, Ambassador," the princess said, her voice tinged with what might have been pity. "In Etherian culture, there are no accidents. Every action, every touch, carries weight and consequence. And you, my dear human, have inadvertently set in motion events that will shake the very foundations of our two civilizations." Jason's mind raced, desperately trying to recall every scrap of information he'd ever learned about the Etherians. It wasn't much. They were notoriously private, sharing little of their culture with outsiders. But one fact stood out, a snippet from an old xenoanthropology text. Etherians are touch telepaths of unprecedented power. Physical contact is strictly regulated within their society, as even the briefest touch can forge powerful psychic bonds. The implications hit Jason like a punch to the gut. "Are you saying, are we?" The princess's silver eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Bonded? In a manner of speaking, yes, but it goes far deeper than that, Ambassador Chen. You see, I am not just any Etherian. I am Princess Lyra, heir to the crystalline throne and keeper of the cosmic harmony. And you, by touching me, have claimed a role in Etherian prophecy that has lain dormant for millennia." Jason's legs gave out, and he sank back onto the living crystal bed. "Prophecy," he whispered, feeling as though he'd stumbled into some surreal dream. "What prophecy?" Princess Lyra moved closer, her azure skin seeming to pulse with an inner light. "The prophecy of the Starborn Consort," she said softly. "A human from beyond the cosmic veil who would bridge the gap between our peoples and usher in a new age of unity." She reached out, her hand hovering just inches from Jason's face. He could feel the energy radiating from her, a tingling sensation that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "The touch that began this journey was accidental," Lyra continued, her voice taking on a resonant quality that seemed to echo in Jason's very bones. "But what comes next? That is a choice. Your choice, Ambassador Chen. Will you run from destiny, or will you embrace it?" As the celestial tear hurtled through the star-studded void towards Ethoria, Jason Chen found himself poised on the knife's edge of a decision that would alter not just his fate, but the fate of two civilizations. The weight of history pressed down upon him, a burden he had never asked for, but could no longer ignore. With a deep breath, he met Princess Lyra's silvery gaze and made his choice. Cultural clash. The celestial tear emerged from hyperspace with a soundless flash, the star-studded void giving way to a breathtaking vista that made Jason Chen's heart skip a beat. Aethoria hung before them, a planet unlike any he had ever seen. Its surface was a mosaic of crystalline structures that caught and refracted starlight in dazzling patterns. Massive, geometric formations rose from the planet's surface, reaching towards the heavens like the spires of some impossibly vast cathedral. Orbiting the planet were rings of what appeared to be pure energy, shimmering and pulsating with colors Jason couldn't even name. "Welcome," Princess Lyra's melodious voice came from behind him, "to the crystalline realm." Jason turned to find the Aetherian royal standing at his shoulder, her silver eyes reflecting the glory of her homeworld. "It's incredible," he breathed, momentarily forgetting the bizarre circumstances that had brought him here. A ghost of a smile played across Lyra's crystalline features. "This is but a glimpse of what awaits you, Starborn." The use of that term, Starborn, sent a shiver down Jason's spine. He still wasn't entirely sure what to make of this prophecy Lyra had mentioned. Part of him, the rational diplomat, insisted this was all an elaborate misunderstanding. But another part, a part he scarcely dared acknowledge, thrilled at the possibility of being part of something greater than himself. As the celestial tear began its descent towards the planet's surface, Jason's mind raced. What would he find on Aethoria? How would he navigate the complexities of a culture so alien to his own? And perhaps most pressingly, how would he explain all of this to his superiors back on Earth? The ship touched down with barely a whisper, coming to rest on a landing pad that seemed to grow and reshape itself to accommodate the vessel. As the airlock cycled open, Jason was hit with a wave of sensations, unlike anything he'd ever experienced. The air was thick with an electric charge that made his skin tingle. Sounds reached his ears that defied description. Crystalline chimes, harmonic resonances, and underneath it all, a low, pulsing hum that seemed to emanate from the planet itself. And the colors. Jason's eyes struggled to process the riot of hues and shades that surrounded him, many of which he was certain he'd never seen before. "Come," Lyra said, gesturing for Jason to follow her. "The Harmonic Council awaits." As they made their way through the crystalline city, Jason couldn't help but gape at his surroundings. Buildings seemed to grow organically from the ground, their shapes fluid and ever-changing. Aetherians moved about their business, their bodies shimmering and sometimes seeming to phase in and out of solidity. Many stopped to stare at Jason, their silver eyes wide with what might have been curiosity or alarm. "Your Highness," Jason said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I think it's time you explained exactly what's going on. What is this Harmonic Council, and what do they expect of me?" Lyra's pace slowed, and she turned to regard Jason with an unreadable expression. "The Harmonic Council is the governing body of Aethoria," she explained. "They are the keepers of our most sacred laws and traditions. And as for what they expect—" She paused, her form shimmering slightly. "That is yet to be determined." Before Jason could press for more information, they arrived at a vast, dome-shaped structure that seemed to be composed entirely of pulsating light. As they approached, an opening appeared in its side, inviting them in. Inside, Jason found himself in a cavernous chamber. Tiered seating surrounded a central platform, and in those seats sat dozens of Aetherians, each more resplendent than the last. Their crystalline bodies glowed with internal light, and the air hummed with barely contained energy. At the center of the platform stood a being that could only be the leader of the Harmonic Council, taller than the others, with a body that seemed to be composed of pure, scintillating energy. The counselor's gaze fell upon Jason with an intensity that made him feel utterly exposed. "Greetings, Starborn." The counselor's voice resonated in Jason's mind rather than his ears. "We have long awaited your arrival." Jason swallowed hard, fighting down a surge of panic. He was a diplomat, trained to handle delicate situations. He could do this. "Honored Counselor," he began, bowing slightly, "I fear there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not this Starborn you speak of. I'm just a human diplomat who had an accidental encounter with Princess Lyra." A ripple of what might have been laughter, or possibly outrage, passed through the assembled Etherians. The counselor's form pulsed brightly. "There are no accidents in the cosmic dance, young one. Your touch, brief though it was, has awakened ancient magics and set in motion events that cannot be undone." Jason's mind reeled. Magic? Surely they didn't mean that literally. There had to be some scientific explanation for all of this. "I'm afraid I don't understand," he said carefully. "In human culture, a simple touch doesn't carry such significance." The counselor's form shimmered, and suddenly Jason was assaulted by a barrage of images and sensations. He saw the history of Aethoria unfolding before him. Eons of evolution, the development of their incredible psychic abilities, the careful structuring of their society around the power of touch. He felt the raw energy that flowed through every Aetherian, the constant struggle to maintain harmony and balance. And then he saw himself, a foreign element introduced into this delicate ecosystem. The ripples of his touch spread outward, altering the very fabric of Aethorian reality. As abruptly as it began, the vision ended. Jason gasped, staggering slightly. Princess Lyra steadied him with a gesture, careful not to make physical contact. "Now do you begin to understand?" the counselor asked. "Your presence here, your touch, it changes everything. The prophecy speaks of a union between our peoples, a melding of flesh and crystal that will usher in a new age of cosmic harmony." Jason's diplomatic training kicked in, overriding his shock. "Counselor, members of the Harmonic Council," he said, his voice growing stronger. "While I'm honored by the significance you place on my interaction with Princess Lyra, I must remind you that I am here as a representative of Earth and the broader human community. Any decisions made here will have far-reaching consequences for interstellar relations." A murmur ran through the assembled Etherians. The counselor's form pulsed thoughtfully. "You speak wisely, Starborn, but you cannot deny the reality of what has occurred. The psychic bond forged between you and Princess Lyra is unprecedented in our history. It must be explored, understood, and consummated." Jason's eyes widened. "Consummated?" He sputtered. "Surely you can't mean." "The joining of flesh and crystal," Lyra interjected, her voice soft but firm. "A union that will bridge the gap between our species and unlock untold potential." Jason's mind raced. This was so far beyond the scope of his diplomatic training that he felt completely out of his depth. He needed time to think, to process all of this information. And more importantly, he needed to contact Earth. "Honored Council," he said, choosing his words carefully, "I understand the importance of these events from your perspective, but I am not authorized to make unilateral decisions that could affect the entire human race. I request time to confer with my superiors and fully understand the implications of what you're proposing." The counselor's form flickered, and Jason felt a pressure building in his mind. For a moment, he feared they would simply override his will and force him to comply. But then, surprisingly, the pressure eased. "Your request is unusual," the counselor said, "but perhaps it demonstrates the wisdom spoken of in the prophecy. Very well, Starborn. You shall have time to contemplate and communicate with your people. But know this, the path of destiny is not easily altered. The cosmic dance has begun, and you are now an integral part of its choreography." With a gesture, the counselor dismissed the assembly. As the Aetherians filed out, their crystalline bodies shimmering and shifting, Jason felt a mix of relief and trepidation wash over him. Princess Lyra approached, her silver eyes searching his face. "You handled that well," she said, a note of approval in her melodious voice. "But do not think this delay changes anything. Our fates are intertwined now, Jason Chen. The only question is how we will shape the destiny that awaits us." As Jason followed Lyra out of the council chamber, his mind whirled with the enormity of what had just transpired. He had come to Aethoria as a diplomat, hoping to foster understanding between their peoples. Instead, He found himself at the center of an ancient prophecy, caught between two worlds, and faced with decisions that could alter the course of galactic history. The crystal spires of the Aethorian capital glittered around him, beautiful and alien. Somewhere out there, Earth and the familiar confines of human space seemed impossibly far away. Yet it was to Earth that Jason now had to turn, hoping against hope that someone back home would have some idea of how to navigate this impossible situation. As night fell on Aethoria, casting the crystalline world in a symphony of refracted starlight, Jason Chen prepared himself for what would undoubtedly be the most difficult transmission of his diplomatic career. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and he was the fragile bridge between them. A bridge forged by a single accidental touch. Unexpected alliance. Jason Chen paced the crystalline floor of his quarters, anxiety gnawing at his insides. It had been 3 Earth days since his arrival on Aethoria, 3 days since he'd sent his urgent transmission back to Earth. The response, when it finally came, was not what he'd hoped for. Ambassador Chen. Admiral Zhao's holographic form flickered before him, her face a mask of concern. Your report is troubling, to say the least. The diplomatic corps is in an uproar. Half of them think you've gone native. The other half are calling for immediate military intervention. Jason ran a hand through his disheveled hair. And what do you think, Admiral? Zhao's holographic eyes narrowed. I think we're dealing with forces beyond our comprehension, Ambassador. This talk of prophecies and cosmic dances, it smacks of the kind of mystical nonsense we thought we'd left behind centuries ago. And yet, she paused, her image flickering. And yet, the Aethorians are an ancient and powerful race. We can't afford to dismiss their beliefs outright. So what are my orders? Jason asked, dreading the answer. For now, stall, Zhao replied. Keep them talking. We need time to analyze the situation and prepare for all contingencies. Under no circumstances are you to agree to this. Consummation they speak of. Is that clear? Jason nodded, a knot forming in his stomach. Crystal clear, Admiral. But I'm not sure how long I can keep them at bay. The Harmonic Council is growing impatient, and Princess Lyra. He trailed off, unsure how to describe the growing connection he felt with the Aetherian princess. It was more than just the lingering effects of their accidental touch. In the days since his arrival, they'd spent hours together, with Lyra acting as his guide to Aethorian culture. Despite his best efforts to maintain professional distance, Jason found himself drawn to her otherworldly grace and keen intellect. Admiral Zhao's hologram frowned. Be careful, Chen. Don't let your personal feelings cloud your judgment. Remember, the fate of humanity could rest on your actions. As the transmission ended, Jason slumped onto a chair that obligingly grew from the floor to support him. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a physical force. How could he possibly navigate this cosmic minefield? A chime at his door interrupted his brooding. Enter, he called, straightening up. The door dissolved, revealing Princess Lyra. Her crystalline form seemed to pulse with an inner light, and Jason felt the now familiar tingle of energy that accompanied her presence. Ambassador, she said, her silver eyes unreadable. The Harmonic Council requests your presence. There have been developments. Jason's heart raced as he followed Lyra through the twisting corridors of the Aethorian palace. What new complication could possibly arise? The council chamber was a hive of activity when they arrived. Aethorian officials darted about, their forms shimmering with agitation. At the center of it all stood the High Counselor, their energy form pulsating with barely contained alarm. Starborn. The counselor's voice resonated in Jason's mind. We face a crisis that threatens both our peoples. Observe. With a gesture, the counselor conjured a holographic display that filled the chamber. Jason gasped as he recognized the swirling void of interstellar space, but something was wrong. Vast, dark shapes moved through the blackness, their forms seeming to absorb the very light of distant stars. What are they? Jason whispered. a chill running down his spine. "We call them the Void Eaters," Lyra replied, her voice tight with tension. "An ancient enemy we thought long vanquished. They consume entire star systems, growing stronger with each world they devour." The High Counselor's form flickered. "Our seers detected their approach, but we were blind to their presence until now. It seems that your arrival, Starborn, has shifted the cosmic energies in ways we did not anticipate. The Void Eaters sensed this shift and have altered their course. They come for Ethoria, and Earth lies directly in their path." Jason's mind reeled. Earth was in danger, and it was somehow his fault. "There has to be something we can do," he said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Surely the combined might of Earth's fleets and Ethorian technology would be as nothing before the Void Eaters." The counselor finished. "No, conventional weapons are useless against such a threat. Our only hope lies in the very prophecy that brought you here, Starborn." Lyra stepped forward, her crystalline hand hovering just above Jason's arm. "The union spoken of in the prophecy, it's not just about bringing our peoples together. It's about unlocking a power greater than either of us could achieve alone." Jason looked from Lyra to the counselor, then back to the horrifying image of the approaching Void Eaters. "I don't understand. How could our union possibly stop those things?" The High Counselor's form pulsed. "The touch that brought you here was but a spark. A true joining of human and Ethorian essences could ignite a cosmic flame capable of dragging back the darkness. But such a union has never been attempted. The risks are substantial." "Risks?" Jason asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Lyra's silver eyes met his, filled with a mixture of determination and something that might have been fear. "The energies involved could tear us apart at the molecular level. And even if we survive, we may be changed forever." Jason's mind whirled. This was so far beyond anything he'd been trained for. He thought of Admiral Zhao's orders to stall, to avoid any kind of consummation. But with Earth itself in danger, did he really have a choice? "How long do we have?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The counselor's form shimmered. "The Void Eaters will reach the outer edges of your solar system within one of your Earth weeks. We must act before then, or all will be lost." Jason closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. When he opened them, he found Lyra watching him intently. "I'll need to inform my superiors," he said. "They need to know the stakes we're facing." The counselor nodded, a gesture that sent ripples through their energy form. "Of course. But know this, Starborn. Time is not on our side. Every moment we delay brings the darkness closer." As Jason turned to leave the chamber, he felt Lyra's presence at his side. "I'll assist you in preparing the transmission," she said softly. "Your people will need to understand the full scope of what we face." Together, they made their way to the communication center, an organic-looking room filled with pulsating crystalline structures that somehow interface with human technology. As Jason began composing his message to Earth, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the precipice of something monumental. The transmission to Earth was met with stunned silence. Jason could practically see the gears turning in Admiral Zhao's mind as she processed the information about the Void Eaters and the proposed solution. "This is unprecedented," Zhao finally said, her holographic form flickering with static. "Chen, are you absolutely certain about this threat? And this solution?" Jason nodded gravely. "I've seen the evidence with my own eyes, Admiral. The Void Eaters are real, and they're coming. As for the solution," he glanced at Lyra, who stood just out of the hologram's range. "It's our best hope, possibly our only hope." Zhao's image frowned deeply. "The implications of this union you speak of. Chen, you're talking about fundamentally altering human biology. The ethical considerations alone." "With all due respect, Admiral," Jason interrupted, surprising himself with his vehemence, "we don't have time for ethical debates. Earth has 1 week before the Void Eaters arrive. We need to act now." There was a long pause, filled only by the soft hum of Aethorian technology. Finally, Zhao spoke. "Very well, Ambassador. You have provisional authorization to proceed. But be warned, if this goes wrong, if Earth is placed in any additional danger, the consequences will be severe." As the transmission ended, Jason let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He turned to find Lyra watching him, her silver eyes unreadable. "Your people fear change," she said softly. It wasn't a question. Jason nodded. "It's in our nature. We've come so far, explored so much of the galaxy, and yet in many ways we're still the same frightened creatures who once huddled in caves." Lyra's form shimmered, and for a moment Jason thought he saw a smile play across her crystalline features. Perhaps that is why the prophecy speaks of a human. Your fear gives you courage. Your limitations give you strength. She held out her hand, stopping just short of touching him. "Are you ready to begin, Jason Chen? Once we start down this path, there may be no turning back." Jason looked at her outstretched hand, feeling the energy that crackled in the space between them. He thought of Earth, of the billions of lives hanging in the balance. He thought of the Aethorians, an ancient and wondrous civilization facing extinction. And he thought of Lyra, this impossible being who had turned his world upside down with a single touch. Taking a deep breath, Jason reached out and took Lyra's hand. The moment their skin made contact, the world exploded into light and sensation. Jason felt as though he was being unmade and remade, molecule by molecule. He saw flashes of Aethorian history, felt the pulse of cosmic energies he'd never known existed, and through it all, he felt Lyra's presence, her essence intertwining with his own. When the initial shock subsided, Jason found himself standing in a vast, starlit void. Lyra stood before him, but she was changed. Her crystalline form now had hints of human flesh, while Jason's own body seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice echoing strangely in the cosmic emptiness. "This is the space between," Lyra replied, her voice harmonizing with frequencies Jason had never heard before. "The realm where our two natures meet. It is here that we will forge the weapon to drive back the void." As if in response to her words, tendrils of energy began to coalesce around them. Jason felt knowledge pouring into his mind. The secrets of Aethorian crystal manipulation, the fundamental forces that shape the universe. "Focus, Jason," Lyra's voice guided him. "Feel the energy flowing through you, through us. Shape it with your will." Jason closed his eyes, concentrating on the swirling maelstrom of power that surrounded them. He thought of Earth, of the home he was fighting to protect. He thought of Aethoria, of the wonders he had glimpsed in his short time there. And he thought of Lyra, of the connection that had brought them to this impossible moment. Slowly, painstakingly, a form began to take shape between them. It was neither purely physical nor entirely energy, but something in between, a crystalline lattice that pulsed with living light. Within its structure, Jason could see the combined strength of humanity and Aethoria, a perfect fusion of flesh and crystal. As the creation neared completion, Jason felt a surge of triumph. They had done it. They had forged a weapon capable of. A bone-chilling shriek cut through the void, shattering the moment of victory. Jason's eyes snapped open to see a terrifying sight. The Void Eaters had found them, even in this in-between place. Vast, writhing shapes of absolute darkness surged towards them, threatening to devour everything they had accomplished. "Lyra," Jason cried out, reaching for her. Their hands met, flesh and crystal merging seamlessly. As one, they raised the newly forged weapon, its light blazing against the encroaching darkness. The fate of two worlds, of the entire galaxy, hung in the balance as the cosmic dance reached its crescendo. Perilous journey. The void between realities trembled with the clash of cosmic forces. Jason Chen and Princess Lyra, their beings merged into something beyond human or Aetherian, stood as the last line of defense against the encroaching darkness of the Void Eaters. the weapon they had forged. A crystalline scepter of living light pulsed in their joined hands, pushing back the tendrils of nothingness that threatened to consume them. "We can't stay here." Lyra's voice resonated in Jason's mind, tinged with urgency. "This realm is too unstable. We must return to physical space and confront the Void Eaters directly." Jason nodded, feeling the strain of maintaining their merged form in this in-between place. But how? We're nowhere near Earth or Ethoria. A fleeting image passed between them, a memory of Lyra's, or perhaps ancient Etherian knowledge unlocked by their union. The scepter, they realized in unison. It can open a path. Focusing their combined will, they raised the scepter high. Reality itself seemed to bend around its glowing tip, tearing open a rift in the fabric of space-time. Without hesitation, they plunged through, leaving the void behind. They emerged into the cold vacuum of space, somewhere in the vast expanse between Earth's solar system and Ethoria. Stars wheeled around them, impossibly bright and clear to their enhanced senses. But the beauty of the cosmos was marred by the approaching shadow of the Void Eaters, a roiling mass of darkness that consumed light itself. There, Jason/Lyra spoke, their merged voice echoing strangely in the vacuum. They raised the scepter, its light forming a protective bubble around them. "We need to strike at their core before they reach populated space." They surged forward, propelled by forces that defied conventional physics. As they neared the Void Eaters, the true scale of the threat became apparent. Each of the entities was vast beyond comprehension, large enough to swallow entire star systems. Their forms twisted and writhed, as if they were constantly devouring themselves and being reborn. The lead Void Eater sensed their approach. A tendril of pure darkness lashed out, colliding with their protective field in a shower of anti-light. The impact sent them reeling, tumbling through space. Impossible. Lyra's thoughts echoed in their shared consciousness. They had grown far stronger than our histories recorded. Jason's strategic mind, honed by years of diplomatic maneuvering, raced to analyze the situation. "We need to understand them better. What drives them? What are they really after?" As if in response to his questions, the scepter pulsed. Suddenly, their merged consciousness expanded, touching the fringes of the Void Eaters' alien minds. The experience was overwhelming. A hunger so vast and ancient it defied comprehension, a loneliness that stretched across eons of cosmic time. "They're lost," Jason/Lyra realized, struggling to process the alien concepts. Fragments of a universe that died long ago, endlessly consuming in a futile attempt to recreate their lost home. The revelation staggered them, nearly causing their protective field to falter. Another tendril of void stuff struck, this one grazing their defenses. Pain lanced through their merged form, a hot counterpoint to the absolute cold of space. "We can't fight them conventionally," they realized. "We need to remind them of what they've lost, show them there's more to existence than endless consumption." With newfound purpose, they raised the scepter once more. This time, instead of attacking, they focused on projecting memories and emotions. They showed the Void Eaters the beauty of Earth's blue oceans and verdant forests, the crystalline spires of Ethoria gleaming in alien sunlight. They shared the joy of scientific discovery, the warmth of human love, the transcendent harmonies of Etherian music. For a moment, the Void Eaters' advance slowed. The writhing mass of darkness seemed to pause, as if confused by this novel stimulus. But then, with a psychic shriek that threatened to tear Jason and Lyra's merged consciousness apart, they surged forward with renewed hunger. "It's not enough." Jason's thoughts rang with desperation. "They've been consuming for too long. They can't remember how to be anything else." Lyra's essence pulsed with determination. "Then we'll remind them. But we need to go deeper." Before Jason could question her meaning, Lyra guided their merged form directly towards the heart of the nearest Void Eater. They plunged into the darkness, the scepter's light a tiny spark engulfed by an ocean of shadow. Inside the Void Eater was chaos beyond imagining. Fragments of consumed reality swirled around them. Shattered planets, dying stars, the fading echoes of civilizations long devoured. At the core of it all was a singularity of pure hunger, a need so vast it threatened to swallow them whole. Now, Lyra's voice cut through the madness. Show them everything. Jason understood. Opening himself fully, he poured every memory, every emotion, every scrap of human experience into the scepter. He showed the Void Eater the entirety of human history, every triumph and failure, every joy and sorrow. He shared the taste of a home-cooked meal, the thrill of a first kiss, the wonder of a child's laughter. He offered up the collective hopes and dreams of humanity, the eternal striving to be more than they were. Lyra did the same, her Etherian essence merging with Jason's human memories. Millions of years of crystalline history flowed through them, the birth of stars, the song of cosmic harmonies, the patient crafting of worlds. She shared the Etherian philosophy of interconnectedness, the deep knowing that all things in the universe were part of a greater whole. The Void Eater's consciousness reeled under the assault of memory and emotion. For the first time in eons, it experienced something other than hunger. Confusion gave way to curiosity, then to a faint glimmer of recognition. In that moment of connection, Jason and Lyra pushed with all their combined strength. The scepter flared with blinding light, its power amplified by the very heart of the Void Eater. Reality itself seemed to hiccup, and then they were outside again, floating in open space. But everything had changed. Where the Void Eaters had been, there now hung a vast, shimmering nebula. Tendrils of cosmic gas and dust swirled in beautiful patterns, studded with the beginnings of new stars. "We did it," Jason breathed, his voice filled with awe. We reminded them of what they truly were. Lyra's essence hummed with joy and exhaustion. Not destroyed, but reborn. They remember now. They'll create rather than consume. As the full impact of their victory washed over them, Jason felt their merged form beginning to destabilize. The incredible energies that had sustained their union were fading, their separate natures reasserting themselves. "Lyra," he called out, suddenly afraid. "What's happening to us?" Her thoughts caressed his, soothing and bittersweet. "We're returning to ourselves, my starborn. Our task is complete." "But I don't want to lose this connection," Jason protested, realizing how true it was even as he said it. "I don't want to lose you." A pulse of affection flowed between them. "You won't," Lyra assured him. "We'll always be a part of each other now. But we have responsibilities to our own peoples. They'll need us to guide them in the new era we've created." Jason knew she was right, but the prospect of separation still filled him with sadness. As their merged consciousness began to unravel, he held tight to every sensation, every shared thought and feeling. "I love you," he sent, pouring every ounce of emotion into the thought. Lyra's response was a supernova of joy and warmth. "And I you, my starborn. Always." With a final dazzling flash of light, their merged forms separated. Jason found himself human once more, floating in his spacesuit next to Lyra's crystalline form. Between them hovered the scepter, now inert but still humming with latent power. As the adrenaline of their cosmic battle faded, exhaustion crashed over Jason. His last conscious thought before blackness took him was a silent prayer that this hadn't all been a dream. He awoke to the familiar hum of human engines. Opening his eyes, Jason found himself in the medbay of an Earth ship, Admiral Zhao standing at his bedside with an unreadable expression. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Ambassador," Zhao said, her voice gruff but not unkind. "You've got one hell of a debrief ahead of you." Jason struggled to sit up, his body feeling oddly heavy after his time in merged form. "The Void Eaters," he croaked, his voice hoarse. "Did we really?" Zhao's expression softened slightly. "If by we you mean you and your Aetherian princess, then yes. Long-range scans confirm it. Where there was once a swarm of space-time anomalies that scared the hell out of our best scientists, there's now the beginnings of a stellar nursery. I don't suppose you'd care to explain how you managed that." Before Jason could formulate a response, a shimmer of light caught his attention. A holographic form materialized next to his bed. Lyra, her crystalline beauty somehow undumbed by the projection. "Perhaps," she said, her melodious voice filling the room, "we could explain it together. After all, Admiral, what transpired out there concerns both our peoples equally." Zhao raised an eyebrow, glancing between Jason and the hologram. "I suspected as much. Very well, Your Highness. I believe we have much to discuss." As Lyra began to outline the events that had transpired, Jason felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with his medical treatment. Whatever challenges lay ahead in bridging the gap between their two civilizations, he knew that he and Lyra would face them together. The cosmic dance had brought them together, and now a new movement was beginning, one that would reshape the galaxy in ways no one could have predicted. New horizons. The Grand Assembly Hall of the United Earth Government buzzed with an energy unlike anything in recent memory. Representatives from every nation and off-world colony packed the tiered seating, their faces a mix of anticipation and apprehension. At the center of it all stood Jason Chen, former ambassador, and now something far more, flanked by the shimmering holographic form of Princess Lyra. Admiral Zhao stepped up to the podium, her crisp uniform a stark contrast to the informal attire Jason now wore. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice cutting through the chatter, "we are gathered here today to discuss events that will reshape the very fabric of our civilization. Ambassador Chen, if you would." Jason took a deep breath, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. The scepter they had forged in the heart of the cosmic battle hummed softly at his side, a constant reminder of the incredible journey he had undergone. "People of Earth," he began, his voice stronger and more resonant than he remembered, "what I'm about to tell you will challenge everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe." Over the next hour, Jason and Lyra took turns explaining the threat of the Void Eaters, the ancient Ithorian prophecy, and the incredible merging of their beings that had turned destruction into creation. As they spoke, holographic displays showed the newly formed stellar nursery, teeming with the potential for new life and new civilizations. "The being we became," Lyra's melodious voice filled the hall, "was neither human nor Ithorian, but something greater than the sum of its parts. We glimpsed potentials that neither of our species had ever dreamed of." A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. An older man in the front row stood up, his face etched with concern. "Are you saying you're no longer human, Ambassador Chen?" Jason smiled softly. "I'm as human as I ever was, Senator, but I'm also more. The connection Lyra and I forged has changed us both, opened our minds to new possibilities. And those possibilities are what we're here to discuss today." He gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show a diagram of swirling energies. "The power we tapped into to transform the Void Eaters, it's not gone. It's a fundamental force of the universe, one that both humans and Ithorians can learn to access. With proper training and understanding, we can usher in an era of growth and discovery beyond anything in our history." Lyra's hologram nodded in agreement. "My people have already begun adapting our cities to accommodate human visitors. We stand ready to share our knowledge of crystal harmonics and cosmic resonance. In return, we hope to learn from humanity's incredible adaptability and innovative spirit." The assembly hall erupted in a cacophony of voices, questions and concerns flying from all directions. Jason raised his hand, and a hush fell over the crowd. "I understand your concerns," he said, his voice calm but firm. "This is a massive change, and change is always frightening. But consider the alternative. Had we not taken this leap, both our worlds would have been consumed by the void. Instead, we stand on the brink of a new age of cooperation and discovery." Admiral Zhao stepped forward again. "I've seen the evidence with my own eyes, ladies and gentlemen. I've reviewed the data from our long-range scans and spoken at length with both Ambassador Chen and Princess Lyra. While there are certainly risks involved, the potential benefits of this alliance are too great to ignore. As the assembly debated, Jason felt a familiar warmth in his mind. Lyra's presence, as real to him now as his own thoughts. They'll come around. Her mental voice soothed. Change takes time, but they'll see the wonder of what we've discovered. Jason nodded imperceptibly. I hope so. There's so much at stake. The debate raged for days. Experts in every field were consulted, from physicists trying to understand the new stellar nursery to biologists eager to study the changes in Jason's physiology. Through it all, Jason and Lyra stood as living proof of what was possible when two cultures came together in true harmony. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of arguments and negotiations, a decision was reached. Earth would formally enter into an alliance with Ethoria, with Jason and Lyra serving as the primary liaisons between their peoples. As Jason stood on the steps of the assembly hall, the scepter gleaming at his side, he felt a sense of vertigo at the magnitude of what lay ahead. Reporters clamored for his attention, shouting questions faster than he could process them. Ambassador Chen, what's the next step in human-Ethorian relations? Will we be seeing Ethorian technology on Earth soon? Are there plans for human colonies in the new stellar nursery? Jason raised his hands, calling for quiet. When the clamor died down, he spoke, his voice carrying easily over the crowd. The journey we're about to embark on isn't just about technology exchanges or colonial expansions, he said. It's about fundamentally reimagining what it means to be sentient in this vast, wondrous universe. The merging Lyra and I experienced, it showed us potentials within ourselves that we're only beginning to understand. He paused, looking out over the sea of faces. In the coming months and years, we'll be establishing joint human-Ethorian research centers. We'll be exploring ways to safely recreate the merge on a larger scale, to allow more of our peoples to experience the kind of connection we shared. It won't be easy, and there will be setbacks along the way. But I promise you, the discoveries we make will change everything. As the crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and continued questions, Jason felt a familiar presence materialize beside him. Lyra's hologram smiled out at the assembled humans, her crystalline form shimmering in the sunlight. People of Earth, she said, her voice silencing the crowd, on behalf of Ethoria, I extend to you not just an offer of alliance, but an invitation to join us in exploring the deepest mysteries of existence, to push the boundaries of what we thought possible. Together, we will write the next chapter in the cosmic dance. The years that followed were a whirlwind of activity and discovery. As promised, joint research centers sprang up on both Earth and Ethoria. Human scientists marveled at the intricacies of crystal harmonics, while Ethorian scholars devoured human literature and art with insatiable curiosity. The first successful human-Ethorian merge outside of Jason and Lyra occurred 2 years after the initial alliance. The volunteers, Dr. Emily Sato, a brilliant human physicist, and Zilar, an Ethorian crystal shaper, emerged from the experience forever changed. Their minds expanded in ways they struggled to put into words. It's like seeing color for the first time after a lifetime of black and white. Dr. Sato tried to explain in an interview. The universe is so much vaster, so much more interconnected than we ever realized. As more volunteers underwent the merging process, new breakthroughs came at a dizzying pace. Advances in clean energy, space travel, and medicine revolutionized life on Earth. Ethorian cities began incorporating elements of human architecture, creating breathtaking hybrids of crystal and steel. But perhaps the most profound changes were philosophical. The deep connection experienced in the merge led to a new understanding of consciousness itself. Old divisions, of nation, of species, of ideology, began to fade in the face of a growing awareness of the fundamental interconnectedness of all things. 5 years to the day after the transformation of the Void Eaters, Jason stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, a massive joint human Aethorian outpost orbiting the heart of the new stellar nursery. Beside him, Lyra's physical form shimmered into existence. A recent breakthrough allowed her to manifest briefly outside of Aethorian environments. "It's beautiful," Jason murmured, gazing out at the swirling cosmic gases and newly forming stars. "Sometimes I still can't believe we did this." Lyra's crystalline hand found his, fingers intertwining in a gesture that bridged their two species. "We had help," she reminded him gently. "The Void Eaters. In the end, they chose to remember who they once were, to create rather than consume." Jason nodded, feeling the familiar warmth of their connected minds. "Do you think we'll ever fully understand it all? The cosmic dance, the prophecies, the true nature of consciousness?" Lyra's silver eyes sparkled with amusement. "I hope not," she said. "Where would the fun be if we had all the answers?" A chime sounded, alerting them to an incoming transmission. Admiral Zhao's weathered face appeared on a nearby screen, a rare smile softening her features. "Ambassador, Your Highness," she greeted them. "The first ships are ready. Are you sure you want to do this?" Jason and Lyra exchanged a look, volumes passing between them in an instant. "We're sure, Admiral," Jason replied. "The nursery is stable, and the new stars are ready to support life. It's time for the next phase of our journey." Zhao nodded, her expression a mix of pride and concern. "The colonists are prepared. But I have to ask one more time. Are you certain you want to leave this mission yourselves? You've both become symbols to our peoples. If anything were to happen, all the more reason for us to go," Lyra interjected gently. "This new realm was born from our union. It's only fitting that we help shape its future." As the transmission ended, Jason and Lyra turned back to the viewport. In the distance, they could see the sleek shapes of the colony ships, marvels of human and Aethorian engineering, preparing for their historic voyage. "Are you ready?" Jason asked, a hint of his old nervousness creeping into his voice. Lyra's mind caressed his, soothing and invigorating all at once. "My starborn," she said, using the old term of prophecy with affectionate teasing. "I'm ready for anything, as long as we face it together." As they made their way to the docking bay where their ship awaited, Jason reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. From a simple diplomatic posting to an accidental touch that changed everything. From the brink of annihilation to the dawn of a new era of creation and discovery. The cosmic dance continued, its rhythms more complex and beautiful than ever before. And as their ship detached from the station, carrying them towards the unknown wonders of their newborn star system, Jason and Lyra led the way. Two beings from different worlds, forever changed by their celestial embrace, guiding their peoples towards a future bright with possibility. The end, and a new beginning.